Perfect. So TriMet and OpenStreetMap, how OSM supports our transit services in the Portland metro region. I'm Tatyanna, GIS data analyst for our TriMet mobility and location-based services team. That falls under TriMet IT. So, why OpenStreetMap? It's open source, it's easily editable. So if our writers or internal systems come across errors, we can easily make changes to OSM, and we don't have to wait long periods of time for data to update like you would with a proprietor. OpenStreetMap has a rich source of relevant transit data, such as sidewalks, roads, businesses, data that's relevant to our end users, which is writers, and then also for internal systems that I'll kind of go into in this presentation. There is seamless coverage, seamless data coverage across the city, county, state boundaries. This makes it easier for some of our systems to ingest data that is all in the same format. OSM also supports multimodal routing, so that's, relevant to transit, car, and walking needs. So here is a schematic of how we input and then ingest OSM here at TriMet. So starting with like jurisdiction data updates, writer comments, different feedback that we input into OSM. And then those go into some of our IT systems related to bus tracking, planning and scheduling, and then also the OpenTrip Planner and Paleus Geocoder, which then is eventually also useful for our end users or transit users on trimet.org. And I'll kind of go into some of those systems as well in this presentation. So how does our team specifically use OSM? So we add, update, or fix features in the region. We monitor feedback, jurisdictional data, mailing lists, updates, and different news outlets for changes that can impact navigation. We also look at articles related to business openings and closures and things like that. And then we can perform custom data extracts with OSM data. So an example of this, recently I was requested to look at how many lane miles are in the Portland metro region, and I used OSM data to kind of do that calculation. Another big thing that we use it for is looking at walk sheds. So, how comfortable is a walk for a user of our services and things like that. So some history of TriMet and then OSM in the metro region. So in 2009, TriMet adopted OSM for the trip planning base map. And then from that time, between about like 2012, I believe, there was a group of interns that updated data in OSM. And that also was useful in 2010. So being aerial imagery was allowed to edit OSM. That allowed that team of interns to like better align ways and add attributes to data in OSM. That helped TriMet as well. Another big effort there was the Portland Building Import Project between agencies in the region to import building and address information into OSM. And then in 2016, TriMet had a sidewalk tagging project, which was useful for tagging sidewalk information to ways, and that was for mobility purposes, like helping support pedestrian routing. And then in 2016 to like 2018, Google increased their API pricing, and that encouraged our shift to OSM based alternatives. So some of the work that we do with OSM is our work with OSM is supported by Metro, which is a regional governance agency. And some of that is through the Metro RTO grant, which is the Regional Travel Options Program. And that grant kind of supports transportation demand strategies that increase travel options besides just driving alone. So with that grant, we're also being supported to update OSM. Metro also produces the regional land information system. So RLIS data, which includes a wide array of data like for transportation planning, environment, and kind of more like relevant data for those categories. And with that data that they give us, we're able to go into OSM and update accordingly. So in the top image, you can see highlighted in red are new roads. So I just overlay that with the OSM data and make sure that those roads are inputted. And if they are, great. If they aren't, then I'll just go ahead and do that. Metro also has, they're part of the regional, we're part of the regional aerial photo consortium. So we're able to use their imagery to update OSM data, similar to how you can use Bing. And then, yeah, so that's updated yearly, and that's great for our purposes. You can kind of see in this bottom image here how there is one of those new roads. We're using Metro aerial imagery. And yeah, so that's kind of our little partnership with them. Another way that we're able to update OSM is through, how I mentioned previously, public feedback and input. So we can get flawed trip planning results in our TriMet trip planner. And that usually requires us to review OSM data. So in the image here, it's a little hard to tell, but someone is trying to navigate outside of a shopping center. And they cannot do that. So we look at OSM and we realize that there were ways not connected to the ways that navigate outside of this shopping center. And we were able to connect those ways, and eventually down here, you're now able to navigate outside of a shopping center. So that's one way that we do update OSM and why we update OSM. Another one is like news articles, mailing list updates. So for example, this DMV closure was a bulletin from the Oregon Department of Transportation. That DMV is inside a shopping center, and that is in OSM data. And because we use OSM for our geocoder, which I'll kind of explain later, we don't want our transit users to be navigating to this DMV if it's closed. So I'll go in OSM, make sure it's marked as closed. That way they're not able to search up DMV and this location pops up. Some of these updates are usually like crosswalk updates, like new crossings going in, new construction, and then like I said, business openings or closures. So we'll go in from those mailing lists or articles, reference them, and then be able to show something as open or closed. Sometimes we use regional information, like restaurant inspection lists. That kind of helps know, like, this restaurant was inspected in the last 30 days. It's probably still open. We'll, leave it open. Yeah, so that is how we update OSM. And then one of the major projects that I referenced earlier was the sidewalk tagging project. So in the blue, you can see what sidewalks were tagged along ways prior to the Portland Bureau of Transportation Growing Transit Communities pilot, and also prior to TriMet's sidewalk tagging effort. The reason that we wanted to tag sidewalks along ways was part of the Mobility on Demand Sandbox project. The goal of that was to support comfortable pedestrian routing. Yeah, so just kind of a cool little graphic of our large effort there. Now going into TriMet IT systems. So now we've gone through the schematic of going from inputs into OSM, now kind of like the outputs of that. So the init CAD AVL system, which helps us dispatch and track our vehicles. It uses a script, OSM to init scripts. So ways, relations, restrictions, they're ingested for the turn-by-turn navigation and, like I said, dispatching and tracking for our vehicles. So here's an image of what a operator would see on their bus for making sure they're, following the route that they're supposed to be following. Our intelligent transportation system group oversees this process, but if they run into errors or something wonky that a operator is seeing, we will look at OSM to make sure that the ways, relations, and restrictions are correct for an area to hopefully allow smooth navigation. Another system is HASTIS. HASTIS is a software for managing, scheduling, and planning route operations, I guess. So HASTIS Geo, they update their base map with OSM ways. And I think that is through our service delivery team / scheduling team. And we want to make sure those ways are correct so that when they're doing their planning, that they're actually planning against something that exists and doesn't have, restrictions or things like that. Okay, so Open Trip Planner is something that we also have OSM feed into. So Open Trip Planner, it's an open source journey planning software. It builds a transportation network primarily from GTFS, the General Transit Feed Specification, and OSM data. And that is shown to our end users through the TriMet .org, the trip planner here. So you can see, here's the bus tracking, here's where you can plan a trip. So really useful for us. The data for OSM is updated frequently and QC'd frequently. So if we're getting issues with the trip planner, we will look at OSM on those things of like restrictions and are the ways connected and things like that. Our Rider Support Services team also utilizes Open Trip Planner. Okay, so Peleus Geocoder, as you can see in this screenshot here, is how our users are able to turn place names or address into coordinates. It also does reverse geocoding, and that's really useful for our trip planner. We use Peleus because it's open source. We operate our own instance of it, and OSM is one of the data imports into Peleus. So like I mentioned, businesses, we don't want to make sure, we don't want to have like a business that's closed show up in here and someone navigates to it and it's not open. That's not useful for us. So yeah, that is another IT system or IT program, I guess, that uses that. And then on to my last slide, regional trip. So our current OSM work is kind of focusing outside of the TriMet service region to connect riders from, North Clark County in Washington all the way down to Clackamas County in Wilsonville. So here's like a graphic of some of the ways and businesses that were updated for a period of time in 2004 that I've worked on. And there's more than this, but just showing how we do that so that, yeah, anyway. But the goal of this project is to increase ridership and also to increase the use of car-only transit. Then I did want to just show a trip like I described, like all the way from North Clark County in Washington, all the way down to Wilsonville. I mean, that's a pretty long trip, but it is possible and something that we could do with the trip planner. Yeah. So I guess any questions?